Chapter 7. The Billionaire. The billionaire John Heitzman was dying on the 42nd story of his office tower. The whole floor had been converted into his personal apartment. 2 bedrooms, a workout gym, a swimming pool, a dining room, and 2 studies had comprised his refuge for the past 3 years. During this time, he had not left his apartment even once. Not once had he taken the express lift down to where the core of his financial and industrial empire was in full operation. Not once had he gone up to the roof, where his personal helicopter was on standby, replete with a full crew awaiting his command. 3 times a week, John Heitzman retreated to one of his studies to receive 4 of his closest associates. At these brief sessions, which lasted no more than 40 minutes, he listened to their reports with some indifference and occasionally issued brief instructions. The billionaire's orders were never a subject for discussion. They were simply carried out swiftly and to the letter. The book value of the empire under his exclusive control kept increasing by an average of 16.5% annually. Even over the past 6 months, when Heitzman ceased convening even his tri-weekly sessions altogether, the ledgers showed no decline in profits. The system he had created continued to run smoothly with no glitches. Nobody knew the billionaire's true financial worth. His name was hardly ever mentioned in the press. Heitzman held to the strict rule: money hates trouble. As a young man, he had been admonished by his father along these lines. Let those upstart politicians strut their stuff on the TV screens and in the pages of the press. Let the presidents and governors spout their addresses to the people, assuring them that all is well. Let the billionaires in the public eye go gallivanting about the country with their fancy cars and bodyguards. That is not a course, my dear John, that you yourself should follow. You should always remain in the shadows and use your power, the power of money, to control the governments and the presidents, the wealthy and the poor, in a variety of different countries. But they must never guess who is controlling them. The plan is simple in the extreme. I was the one who created the monetary fund, which lists the names of many different investors. In actual fact, 70% of the fund's capital has been invested by me under different names. On the surface, as far as the dimwit masses are concerned, the fund was created for the support of developing countries. In actual fact, I created it as a device for collecting tribute money from all of the countries involved. Here's an example. Let's say an armed conflict breaks out between 2 sides. One of them, more often both, needs money. Let them have it. It will be repaid with interest. Or some country is experiencing social upheaval and again money is required. Let them have it. It will be repaid with interest. Or 2 political forces come into conflict. One of them will get money through our agents, and once again, it will be repaid with interest. Russia alone pays us an annual sum of $3 billion. At age 20, John Heitzman had especially enjoyed these discussions with his father, despite his earlier severity and reticence to talk. One day, the father summoned John to his office and invited him to make himself comfortable in a soft armchair by the fireplace, where he himself poured a cup of his son's favorite coffee with cream and asked with a spark of genuine interest, "How are your college studies going, John?" "They're not always that interesting, Dad. I get the feeling the professors aren't too good at giving a clear and comprehensible explanation of the law of economics." "Good. An apt assessment. But more precisely, professors today cannot explain the laws of economics because they haven't the faintest idea of them themselves. They think economics is the domain of economists, but it isn't. World economics is under the control of psychologists, philosophers, and high-stakes players. When I was 20, my father, your granddad, John, let me into the secrets of the management process. Now that you're 20, I think you're worthy of inheriting this knowledge." "Thanks, Dad," replied John. Thus began, in these fireside chats, lessons in the laws of economics one never hears about at a university. The father taught his son using his own unique method. The whole education process was conducted in those heart-to-heart conversations, on a good-natured tone, with examples and elements of play. The information the senior Heitzman revealed to his son was astounding. There was no way one could obtain it anywhere else, even in the most prestigious universities in the world. "Tell me, John," asked the father, "do you know how many wealthy people there are in our country, or in the world?" "Their names are listed in business journals in order of their estate value," replied John calmly. "Where do we rank in these lists?" This was the first time that father had used "we" instead of "I." That meant that he already considered John a full partner. While he did not want to offend his father, John replied, "Your name isn't included on these lists, father." "Yes, you're right. I'm not there, even though just our annual profit alone amounts to more than the whole estates of many included on the lists. And my name isn't there because one's wallet should never be transparent. Many of these people work either directly or indirectly for our empire, for yours and for mine, son." "Dad, you must be a genius at economics. I can't even imagine how you can make such a huge empire pay us tribute money every year without military intervention. You've managed to set up such a tremendous economic operation." The senior Heitzman took a pair of fire tongs and gave a poke to the logs in the hearth. Then, without a word, he poured 2 glasses of light wine for his son and himself. It was only after his first wee sip that he finished explaining. "You know, I didn't set up any operation at all. The capital under my control simply allows me to give orders, and others carry them out. Many analysts and government experts in various countries, even their presidents, would be astonished to learn that the current situation in their countries is not determined by their own actions, but rather by my will. Political technology centers, economics institutions, analytical thinking tanks, and government agencies in many countries, none of them are aware that they're working along strict guidelines laid down by my departments. And I don't have that many employees. For example, all of Russia's socio-economic policy and its military doctrine are determined and controlled by one department comprising 4 psychologists. Each psychologist has 4 secretaries. Not one of them knows about the activities of the others. I'll tell you how the control system works. It's really quite simple. But first, John, you should understand the true laws of economics, which you'll never get from any college professor. Professors don't even know they exist. Here's a law. In the conditions of a democratic society, presidents, governments, banks, as well as major and minor entrepreneurs in all countries work for a single entrepreneur who stands at the top of the economic pyramid. They worked for my father, and now they're working for me, and soon they will all be working exclusively for you. John Heitzman looked at his father and could scarcely take it all in. Certainly he knew that his father was rich, but here they were talking about much more than riches. They were talking about supreme power, which was now going to be passed by inheritance to him, John. All this incredible information still had not sunk in completely. How could it be that in a free and democratic society, everyone from presidents on down to the hundreds of thousands of firms, both major and minor, supposedly all separate legal entities, were in fact working for just one man, namely his father? When I first heard from your granddad what I have just now shared with you, I had a hard time figuring it all out. Right now, John, you're probably in the same boat. But let me make one thing perfectly clear, the elder Heitzman went on. There are wealthy people in this world, but for every wealthy person, there is someone even wealthier. And there is one who is the wealthiest of all. All these wealthy people, and consequently, all the people under their control, work for him, the one who is the wealthiest of all. This is the law of the system under which we live. All this talk of unselfish aid to developing countries is nothing but a bluff. Sure, wealthy countries grant credit to developing countries through international funds, but in fact, they do this simply to get back a healthy amount of interest in return for using their credit. In other words, to collect tribute money. Russia, for example, pays $3 billion a year to the IMF, and this amount only represents the interest on the credit allotted to Russia. Many economists are aware that the basic financing for the IMF is provided by American capital. They realize that the extortionate interest rates on credit used is siphoned off to the USA. But who they go to specifically, nobody knows. America, as a country, is simply a convenient shield in the capital game, and it is dependent on capital more than any other nation. Tell me, John, did you know that America has a national debt? Yes, Dad, I know. It's an astronomical figure. Just last year, it amounted to, and servicing the debt costs. So that means you realize that a country which loans to other countries at the same time takes out huge loans itself through its own Federal Reserve? And who does it belong to, this Federal Reserve? John had never thought about whom America was in debt to, but as he tried to answer his father's question, it suddenly dawned on him. The United States of America. In the USA, every taxpayer pays into the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve of the USA is a private bank, and consequently all America is paying hundreds of billions of dollars to private individuals, or to a single individual. John Heitzman had never been flustered in his life. He led, as they say, a healthy lifestyle. He did not drink or smoke. He maintained a healthful diet. He worked out every day in his private gym. Only in the past 6 months, he had stopped going to the gym. He had spent these 6 months lying in a bed in one of his spacious bedrooms, crammed full with state-of-the-art medical equipment. Doctors maintained on-call shifts around the clock in the next room. But John Heitzman did not trust modern medical science. He felt no need to even talk with his doctors. There was one professor of psychology, however, that he occasionally deigned to favor with brief answers. Heitzman did not even care to know his doctors' names, including the name of this professor, though he did make a note to himself that he was the most sincere and honest of the lot. It is raining. La, 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 la. The professor talked a good deal, but what he said often included not just medical assertions, but also reasonings and a desire to determine the cause of a disease. One day he came in all excited and announced right at the doorway, "I spent all last night and all this morning thinking about your condition, and I think I've discovered the cause of your illness. That means that once we've removed the cause, we can talk about a pretty quick recovery. Oh, sorry, Mr. Heitzman. I forgot to say hello. Good afternoon. I got a bit carried away with my ideas." The billionaire did not answer the professor's greeting, or even turn in his direction, but that was how he treated all his doctors. And sometimes he would make a gesture to a doctor who had just entered the room, just a slight movement with his hand, which they all knew meant, "Go away." Not perceiving any such gesture at this time, the professor kept on explaining excitedly as follows. "I do not agree with my colleagues on the need to transplant your liver, kidneys, and heart. Granted, these organs of yours aren't functioning up to par at the moment. No, sir. Not up to par, that's a fact, but neither will transplanting the organs. The reason that they're not up to par lies in your extreme depression. I've gone over your medical history quite a few times now. I think I've made a major discovery. Your attending physician, he's a really great guy, wrote down everything in detail. Every single time he noted your mental condition. Your internal organs would always start to fail the moment you got into a depressive state. Now here comes the $64,000 question. Is it the failure of your internal organs causing the depression? Or the other way around? Is the depression causing the organ failure throughout your body? I'm absolutely convinced that depression is the original cause. It's a condition where someone ceases to strive for any goal. He loses interest in what's going on around him, and he doesn't see any sense in living. And then the brain begins to transmit only half-hearted commands to the entire body. And I mean the whole of it. The stronger the depression, the weaker the commands. At a certain level, the brain may cease giving these commands altogether, and then comes death. So the ultimate cause is depression. As far as for eliminating it entirely, well, that's something modern medicine has no answer for. So I turned to folk medicine, and now I'm convinced that your extreme depression is the result of a curse. Yes, sir. More specifically, someone has put a spell on you, and I'm prepared to back that up with quite a number of facts. The billionaire was about to make his go-away gesture. He disliked all esoteric healers, people who promised to exorcise demons and take away spells or set a defense against them, people he considered petty operators or swindlers. No doubt the professor was on the rebound from the ineffectiveness of modern medicine, he's thought, and so has fallen to the level of these so-called healers. But the billionaire did not manage to execute the gesture. The professor headed him off with words evoking just a smidgen of interest, but interesting all the same. I have the feeling you're getting ready to send me away, maybe for good, but I ask you, no, I beg you, just give me 5 or 6 more minutes. It's very possible that once you've understood what I have to say, you will make a full recovery, and I'll make an important discovery. Or rather, I've already made it, I just need to confirm it once and for all. The billionaire did not make his go-away gesture. For 3 whole seconds, the professor stared at Heitzmann's motionless hand and realized he could continue, which he did at rapid-fire pace. People look at each other differently, sometimes with indifference, other times with love or hate or envy or fear or respect, but it's not the outward expression of the eyes that's the main factor here. The outward appearance can just be an ordinary mask, like the faux smile, F-A-U-X, smile of a waiter or a salesman. What's important are the true attitudes, the real actual feelings one person harbors towards another person. The more positive emotions people express toward a particular individual, the more positive energy is concentrated in him. On the other hand, if negative emotions predominate in the atmosphere surrounding a person, he will experience an accumulation of negative and destructive energy. Among the common folk, this is called a spell, and folk healers base their actions on this phenomenon. By no means are all folk healers charlatans. The whole point is that a person who has been the target of too much negative energy from those around him is himself capable of neutralizing it, or in other words, compensating for it. By telling the patient that he has removed the spell by certain types of actions, the healer helps him believe that he is cleansed. If the patient believes the healer, he really is evening out the balance within himself between the positive and the negative. But if he doesn't believe it, it's not going to happen. You don't believe in folk healers, and consequently, they won't be of any help to you. But that isn't to say that you don't have an excess of negative energy which is destructive to your mind and body. Why negative? Precisely because a man in your position can only be looked upon by people around you with resentment. And I don't mean just a bit of harmless envy. They might look at you, or more specifically, treat you, with hatred. People you've fired or haven't given a raise to. A lot of people feel your power and react with fear. You see, all that amounts to negative energy. To counteract it, you need positive energy. This can be supplied by family members or relatives, but all your wives have run out on you, and you don't have any children or friends, and you don't communicate with your relatives. You have no sources of positive energy around you. Now, an individual human being is capable of producing positive energy, and in sufficient quantity, within himself, all on his own. But for this, he needs to set his heart on some kind of dream or goal, and the step-by-step realization of this goal will bring about positive emotions. You've already achieved so much in life that now, it seems, you don't have any more goals or dreams left. But it's extremely important to have such a goal and to strive to attain it. I've analyzed the physical and mental health of different types of business people. Someone who likes mixing dough and baking pies and sells them, is happy that he can now afford to buy something that he needs, and dreams of developing his business. After all, it's only with development that he receives many of the goods and services civilization has to offer. A bank manager, or the owner of a profit-making concern, likewise strives to develop his own business, strives for increased profits, but often with less enthusiasm than someone who makes or sells pies. It's paradoxical, but it's true. The enthusiasm just isn't as great. It's not as great because he's got significantly fewer tempting benefits ahead of him than the pie salesman. For him, the achievements of civilization have no special value. They're just routine. If someone with a relatively modest income suddenly has the chance to buy a car, the purchase of that car will evoke in him a tremendous feeling of satisfaction or even ecstasy, while someone who is relatively well off won't get any thrill from buying a brand new car. To him, it's merely a trifle. Paradoxical but true. Rich people have fewer occasions for delight than those less well off. There's one other factor that can bring satisfaction: beating one's competition, but you, Mr. Heitzman, it seems, you have no competition at all. So it turns out that you have only negative energy acting upon you, and there's a great deal of it out there. Oh, and I forgot to mention, there's just one force that can conquer the masses of negative energy. Just one, but it's powerful, incredibly powerful. It's called the energy of love. It's when you find yourself in a state of love and somebody loves you. Unfortunately, in your case, however, you don't have any women in your life. In fact, it looks like you don't really have any interest in them at all. At your age and in your condition, you're not likely to have any more interest in women. There's a lot of evidence to back up my conclusion. I've compared the longevity stats of rich people, predominantly politicians and presidents, over the past 100 years. The results are quite persuasive. Longevity for the world's power brokers doesn't look all that great by comparison with the common folk. In fact, more often it's less. Paradoxical but true. And facts are facts. Presidents and millionaires, in spite of being under constant medical care, in spite of having access to the state-of-the-art technical help and medicines and to only the highest quality foodstuffs, they're still getting sick and dying just like anyone else. All this is eloquent testimony to the fact that surrounding negative energy exerts a colossal influence, and no medical science, even the very latest, is able to counteract it. So what's the bottom line? Is it a dead-end situation? I think there's a way out. It may be small. It may be only one of its kind, but it's there. Yes, sir, it's there. Memories. My dear Mr. Heitzman, please try to remember the different stages of your life. Any memory that will bring back pleasant feelings. Most importantly, if there's anyone that you've given a serious promise to and you haven't carried it out, see if there's any way you can carry it out now. I ask you, for your own sake, and for the sake of science, to take at least 2 or 3 days and try to remember the good moments in your life. We've got equipment to monitor the functioning of many of your bodily organs. The monitoring goes on minute by minute. If you do what I'm recommending, and if these instruments start indicating positive results, there's indeed a chance that we will be able to see you through a full recovery. Yes, sir, you'll be able to make it. I certainly will find a way. Or maybe you'll find it on your own. Maybe it'll just come about all by itself, but your life will come across it on its own. The professor fell silent and once again fixed his gaze on the hand of his patient, lying motionless before him. A few seconds later, the customary gesture sent the professor out of the room. Like many people, John Heitzman began to recall his past. He had at least something of an understanding of what the professor had said to him. He could try and find happy moments from his past life, and they might have a positive effect. The problem was, though, that everything he had experienced in his life seemed not just devoid of anything pleasant, it was uninteresting and even senseless. Heitzman remembered how he took his father's advice and married the daughter of a billionaire, thereby adding to his empire's wealth. The marriage did not bring him any satisfaction. His wife turned out to be barren, and after 10 years of conjugal life, she died of an overdose of narcotics. Then he married a famous fashion model, who was the very picture of a wife passionately in love, but just 6 months after the wedding, his security service showed him snapshots of his wife cavorting about with her former lover. He was not about to discuss it with her. He simply gave the orders to his bodyguards to see to it that he would never have the occasion to see or be reminded about her again. By now, in his recollections, Heitzman had reached the starting point of his participation in his father's empire. He had not been able to pinpoint even one pleasant instance that he felt like holding on to and use as a source of positive emotions. There was just one moment of pleasantness that he could remember. It was when he proved to his father that there was no need of becoming the sole owner of the monetary fund. Other investors in the fund, looking for a good return, would devote their mental energy to increasing the fund's capital, and thus would be working for them, the Heitzmans. The father took some time to think about this. Then, several days later at dinner time, he broke with his customary reticence to offer appraisal and said, "I agree with your proposal, John, regarding the fund. You're on the right track. Congrats. Go ahead and give some thought to other areas, too. It's time for you to take over the reins." For the next several days, John was in an upbeat mood. He ended up making several more decisions and increasing the profits of their financial and industrial empire even more. However, he no longer derived any special feeling of joy from this. The reports of increased profits were cold and dispassionate. No further praise would be coming his way. His father died, and praise from underlings brought no particular pleasure. John continued going back to his recollections and reached the time of his childhood. The rare moments of contact with his father were dimly illumined in his thought. His ever-strict father, as a rule, would issue admonishments in the presence of nannies and teachers, which he had hired for young John. Then all at once a wave of warmth rolled through the body of the billionaire lying motionless on his bed. His body gave a pleasant shiver. In Heitzman's recollections, the curtain rose on a bright and very clear scene. He saw a far corner of the garden of his family's estate, and there, surrounded by small acacia bushes, a little house about 2 meters high with a single window. For some quite inexplicable reason, all children yearn to create their own little house, their own space. That yearning is there, no matter whether the child has his own room in his parents' house or lives in the same room with his parents. With almost all children, there comes a time when they start building their own little cubbyhole. In every man, capital M, apparently, there is a gene that preserves some kind of ancient memory telling him he ought to set up his own space. Whereupon any adult or child heeding this call, which arises from the depths of eternity, goes about setting it up at once. Never mind how amateurish it turns out by comparison with modern apartments. A man who has built this for himself derives much more satisfaction from it than he would from the most chic and stylish apartment. And so the 9-year-old John Heitzman, who had 2 spacious rooms all to himself in the family manor, still decided to build his own little house with his own hands. He constructed it out of plastic boxes that had been used for transplanting seedlings. These boxes turned out to be handy building materials. They came in a variety of colors. John made the walls using blue boxes with another border around the whole perimeter. He piled the boxes on top of each other, fastening them together in tongue and groove fashion. On one wall, John made the box bottoms face outward, which meant the whole inside wall was comprised of a multitude of shelves. Boards with stapled-on plastic film served for the roof. He spent a whole week building his little house, taking advantage of the 3 hours a day he was allotted for leisure walks in the fresh air. On the 7th day, just as soon as leisure time came, he headed straight for his creation in the far corner of the garden. Pulling back the acacia branches, he saw the house he had built and froze in astonishment. There by the entrance stood a little girl looking in the doorway of his creation. The girl was wearing a light blue calf-length skirt and a white cardigan with frills on the sleeves. Her chestnut-colored hair fell in ringlets around her shoulders. At first, young John reacted with some jealousy to the presence of a stranger beside his creation, and he inquired with a hint of annoyance, "What are you doing here?" The girl turned her pretty little face toward him and replied, "I'm admiring." "What are you admiring?" "This marvelous and clever house." What kind of house?" Young John queried in amazement. "Marvelous and most clever," repeated the girl. "Houses may be marvelous, but I've never heard them called clever," observed John thoughtfully. "Only people can be clever." "Yes, of course people can be clever, but when a clever person builds a house," the girl countered, "the house turns out to be something clever too." "What do you find clever about this house?" "The inside wall. It has so many shelves. You can put a lot of useful things on those shelves, like toys." John was pleased at how this little girl reasoned things through. It flattered him, and possibly the girl herself pleased him. "She's pretty and reasons things through cleverly," he thought to himself, and aloud he said, "This house I built." And he immediately added, "What's her name?" "I'm Sally. I'm 7. I live here in the servants' quarters since my dad works as a gardener here. He knows a lot about plants, and he's teaching me. I already know how to raise flowers and graft branches onto trees. What's your name? Where do you live?" "I live in the manor house. My name's John." "That means you're the master's son?" "Yeah." "All right, Johnnykins, let's play house." "How do we play that?" "We play like we live in this house, the way grown-ups live. You can be the master since you're the master's son, and I'll be your servant since my dad's a servant." "That won't work," observed John. "A servant's supposed to live in the servants' quarters. Only the husband and his wife and their children can live in the manor house." "Then I'll be your wife," exclaimed Sally, and asked, "Can I be your wife, Johnnykins?" John did not answer. He went into the house, took a glance around, and then turned to look at Sally, who was still standing just outside the doorway. He said rather brusquely, Brusquely, "Okay, come on in and pretend you're my wife. We have to think about this and how we're going to decorate the inside." Sally stepped into the house. She looked into John's eyes with tenderness and excitement and said, almost in a whisper, "Thank you, Johnnykins. I shall try to be a good wife to you." John did not come into his house every day. During the time allotted for leisure walks, he was not always allowed to play in the garden. Escorted by bodyguards and tutors, he would be taken instead for a visit to a city park or Disneyland, or go horseback riding. But when he managed to get away to his little house, he almost always found Sally waiting for him. With each succeeding visit, John took interest in the changes that had been occurring in the house. First of all, a carpet appeared on the floor, contributed by Sally, then little curtains on the windows over the entrance. Next came a little round table with an empty photo frame on it. Sally said, "Johnnykins, you come here less and less often. I keep waiting for you, but you don't show up. Give me a photograph of yourself, and I'll put it in this frame. I can look at your picture, and it will make waiting for you easier." John left her his photograph when he came to say goodbye to the house and to Sally. He was going to be moving with his parents to another villa.